Okay, welcome everybody. Hello, I'm Casey Hamilton. I'm a campus health specialist at UBC Okanagan campus. And today I'm very pleased to present two groups of students who have been doing some wonderful work with us in the area of food security for our campus at UBC Okanagan. We're going to start off with our first presentation, Food Security at UBCO, What's Your Recipe? Desiree, Mariza, and Kimberly work with me on this project. They're going to take the wheel in one moment, and then we'll break for 5 minutes for questions, and then following that we'll go on to the next presentation by Sarah, who is going to be presenting on our Physical Food Hub project. At any point, if you'd like, you're welcome to type questions in the chat box. If they're easy questions to answer, I'll be happy to answer them during the presentations. Otherwise, we'll save them for the 5-minute question. So I'm going to pass it over now to Mariza and Kim.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Okanagan Silks Nation. We welcome each of you to type which territories you reside in into the chat box. We recognize that our current colonial food systems have been detrimental to Indigenous food systems and their food sovereignty. True reconciliation cannot occur without intentional efforts to work and learn alongside our Indigenous communities in finding our way back to a supportive and regenerative food system. Furthermore, we would like to acknowledge the importance of this to our research as our Indigenous students experience an abundance of barriers that relate intergenerationally to colonialist times and the trauma that their ancestors endured. I'm Mariza, and I'm presenting today with my co-researcher Kim. We would like to share with you the results of the Voice 5 project, Food Security at UBCO, What's Your Recipe? Before we get into talking about the research project, we want to introduce you to our research team. Kim and I have a third co-researcher, Desiree, who could not be here with us today. Our principal investigator is Dr. Joan Batorf, and our supervisor is Casey Hamilton. A special thank you to Lauren Airth, Phil Bond, Jenica Frisk, and Julie Statue for their expertise and insight throughout this project. Thank you to those who attended our advisory group sessions to provide advice throughout this research and assisted at key points with recruitment.
Just to give you a quick background, food security has been a growing topic of interest and concern at both UBC Vancouver and UBC Okanagan. This project advances components of the Food Security Initiative by UBC Wellbeing, the Climate Emergency Engagement and Climate Action Plan, the Indigenous Strategic Plan, and the Inclusion Action Plan. Before we get started, we want to briefly go over what food security is in case anyone is unaware, just so we all start off on the same page. So there are 3 pillars of food security. There's household food insecurity, capacity, and food systems. The first, household food insecurity, is when an individual worries and/or doesn't have enough money to buy the food they need. Understandably, this is related to a lot of negative impacts, such as stress, as well as increased risk for mental and physical conditions. Next is capacity, and this has to do with a person's knowledge related to food and food-related finances, as well as their ability to mobilize this knowledge. So this is things like cooking skills, grocery shopping, or meal prepping. And this area also relates to a person's capacity to engage in and take action within their food system. Finally, food systems is a complex system that involves the policies, processes, structures that govern and manage food, whether that be how it's produced, sold, or disposed of.
We're going to briefly discuss what we knew about food security at UBCO before we commenced this project. In 2018, Voice 4 asked the student body about their experience with household food insecurity. The results of this study indicated that approximately 42.3% of the student body experienced some level of household food insecurity. A logistic regression analysis of the demographics from the study revealed that females, those with a diverse ability, students living on campus, individuals self-reporting as belonging to a visible minority, and international students were more likely to experience food insecurity than other student groups. When adjusted for gender, years on campus, and living situation, students who reported experiencing 2 or more forms of marginalization were 2.52 times more likely to be food insecure compared to students who do not report any form of marginalization. Another food security survey, the 2019 Undergraduate Student Experience Survey, indicated that 42.3% of respondents experienced low or very low household food insecurity, the exact same number as the study in 2018. Both of these studies are on par with the Canadian averages for students, averaging approximately 40%. This is high in comparison to the general Canadian population, which sits around 12%. Further analysis of the 2019 Undergraduate Experience Survey data revealed that household food insecure students' grades are on average 4% lower than their food secure peers. 15% report mental or physical health challenges, and 18% may need to abandon their studies due to financial reasons.
As part of this project, we prepared a basic environmental scan of our campus food system with the help of our campus partners. Special thank you to Julie, who is our campus dietitian, who helped a lot with this element of the project. This scan looked at the physical space of UBCO and the surrounding community in terms of the accessibility and availability of food. On this slide, we have listed some of the things that we learned throughout this process. At UBCO, we have nearly 10,000 undergraduate students, over 1,000 graduate students, 571 faculty members, and 953 staff members. We found that UBCO Food Services has 2 dining halls and 3 chain restaurants. The Student Union has 1 restaurant, 1 coffee shop, and 2 takeout places. Of these food spaces, the earliest restaurant on campus opens at 7 a.m. and the latest closes at 12 a.m., though food selection is limited to pizza after 10 p.m. UBCO requires students living in dorms to purchase a meal plan upon acceptance into the dorms. There are 4 options for the meal plan: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, with the cheapest being approximately $3,700 and the most expensive being about $6,500. There is no grocery store on campus, and the closest off-campus grocery store is Nestor's, which is approximately a 20-minute walk and has poor walkability access. We also found multiple clubs, programs, and initiatives that support food security at UBCO. This includes student initiatives such as Project Roots and Karma Bowl, the Ice Cream Club, and clubs such as the Leftovers Club and the Culinary Club. The Student Union office recently took over the UBCO Food Exchange, now known as the PANTRY. The PANTRY has operating hours between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., and any student is able to access its services. We also just want to mention that due to COVID-19, this has changed a little bit, and now the Student Union accepts requests for hampers once per week for students. Our project started in June of last year, where we began the initial planning for the project and gathering of background information. This included the creation of our environmental scan, a comprehensive literature review, and the formation of our proposal and advisory group. The project was officially launched in November to the campus community at our Thrive Community Breakfast event. In January and February, we held a number of table talk discussions and conducted our data analysis from March to June. We have started to disseminate the results of this research, beginning with this presentation, and will continue to do so for any interested campus community members. The results of this project have been used to inform food security action projects for our campus, including the Physical Food Hub project, which is the content of the following presentation.
Before we get into the methods of our research project, we're just going to touch on our research question and objectives. For this project, we wanted to know what systemic factors were supporting and hindering household food insecurity capacity and the broader food system at UBCO. We wanted to give students an inclusive opportunity to speak about food insecurity and how it related to them, and we aimed to illustrate this student experience so that we could uncover the barriers that students are facing and begin to develop real solutions.
Next, we're going to go over the methods for how we put our research question and objectives into action. The VOICE methodological framework guided this study. The framework consists of community-based participatory action research, or CBPAR methods, settings-based health promotion strategies, and student-non-student partnerships. To recruit participants, we used posters, social media, and newsletter promotion. We set up informational booths to talk to students about the study, as well as walking booths. In a few instances, we presented to classrooms about the study, and we also contacted key campus community members who work with specific student demographics to help us contact students who might be interested in our study. We want to hear from students that have experienced or are currently experiencing household food insecurity, as well as students identifying with historically and systematically marginalized groups. We used a screening tool to determine which talks would be most appropriate for them to participate in. This increased a sense of safety amongst table talk participants. We held 3 types of table talks: general household food insecurity for any student identifying as household food insecure, specific household food insecurity for specific marginalized groups, and capacity, which had a focus on food and financial literacy and food systems. To analyze our results, in vivo was used. Each table talk was transcribed and a coding framework was developed based on the key ideas and themes from the data. Our goal was to have a rich description of the experiences of food security for our participants, which we would then use to identify priorities and develop recommendations and strategies for improving food security on campus. This is just a portion of our screening tool that we use to determine food insecurity amongst participants. It was adapted from the Household Food Insecurity module for the Canadian Community Health Survey.
Now it's time to talk about our results. The VOICE research team hosted 12 mouthful table talks. 9 of these table talks focused on household food insecurity, and you can see the breakdown of who was invited to the specific talks on the right side of the slide. The remaining 3 table talks focused on food capacity and literacy. Our demographic data was acquired using the demographic questionnaire administered to students at the beginning of each mouthful table talk. We had 54 participants in our study. When asked about their identification, 32 participants said they were female, 19 were male, 1 was non-binary, 1 was transgender, and 1 preferred not to answer. 19 participants identified as an international student, 13 identified as LGBTQ+, 7 identified as a person with a diverse ability, 9 identified as a visible minority, and 5 identified as Aboriginal. When asked about identity, 2 participants reported they prefer not to answer. Intersectionality, the phenomenon in which multiple factors work together to govern an individual's social standing, power, and overall human experience, was present in this data, explaining why the numbers for the identity question do not equal 54. Of the 54 participants, 23 identified with some level of intersectionality. 33 participants reported that they do not work a job during the school year, 4 worked full-time, and 17 worked part-time. 2 of the participants who reported working a full-time job were taking between 1 to 3 courses, whereas the remaining 2 reported being enrolled in 5 or more courses. Students were asked whether they were receiving financial aid from the government or university. 23 were not receiving any financial support, whereas 31 were. In terms of food, the majority of participants were not on a meal plan, comprising 80% of our participants. All participants had but one had access to cooking facilities. Of the participants in our household food insecurity table talks, only 7% accessed food assistance in the past year. Participants shared through our table talks that the reason for this is that accessing food assistance is associated with shame and stigma for many students.
We wanted to understand more about how students who were experiencing food insecurity were coping with and managing their situation. We organized their management skills into 2 categories: budget-related coping and avoidant coping. Budget-related coping strategies were more proactive methods, such as shopping sales and splitting costs with roommates. More severely, avoidant coping strategies involved students sleeping instead of eating and starving themselves, sometimes for days. Many students talked about how they would cope with the shame they felt for being food insecure by making jokes or downplaying the severity of their situations. Food insecurity has negative effects on virtually every aspect of students' lives. In terms of physical health, students felt an overall lack of energy and struggled to stay focused on daily tasks. Students reported physical body changes, such as weight gain and loss, as well as loss of muscle. They experienced low blood sugar levels as a result of poor nutrition, leading to dizziness and fainting. Some students also experience exacerbation of pre-existing issues, such as for those who were hypoglycemic, who were not able to meet the nutrition requirements and struggled with their physical health as a result. Student academics were also affected. They reported sleeping through classes and important deadlines due to their extreme lethargy. Students felt that they didn't have enough energy to pay attention in class or to retain information. Some students reported that they prioritized their academics over their well-being, often with detrimental effects. In some cases, students needed to reduce their course loads or take on additional years of school due to related mental health or financial issues. Additionally, students' mental wellness was affected. They experienced mood swings and an exacerbation of pre-existing mental health conditions, such as anxiety and depression. They experienced additional food-related stress, worry, and shame. Some students addressed the emotional labor that is required to navigate the food system, specifically our students who have autism. Lastly, students' social well-being was impacted. Students felt isolated due to busy scheduling and from being food insecure. Many reported not being able to attend events due to a lack of funds. We'd also like to address the interconnectedness of these categories as they overlap heavily and directly affect each other.
Participants shared that being a student meant they faced unique barriers in comparison to the general population that puts them at higher risk for household food insecurity. This is due to their low socioeconomic status, considering that most students are now financially on their own for the first time in their lives. Some students also grew up in low socioeconomic status households and feel immense guilt when asking their family for financial or food assistance. Students also experienced a multitude of mental health factors that make their experience with the food system a challenging one. For example, a participant with autism described how it was difficult for them to shop at grocery stores due to the highly stimulating environment. Students with ADHD and OCD diagnoses identified their difficulties in making food a priority and not being able to pull themselves away from their schoolwork. Anxiety disorders such as agoraphobia and depressive disorders such as seasonal affective disorder make it hard for students to accomplish everyday tasks such as going to the grocery store, going to work, and doing schoolwork. Additionally, cultural factors are at play. Students of specific cultures describe the idea that asking for help is embarrassing and instead, students must save face. This was particularly true for students of Asian descent. Students of other cultures, including Canadian culture, felt that the idea of the starving student has been normalized in society and felt that their struggles might be disregarded because of this. As well as being higher at risk for food insecurity, students also juggle multiple priorities outside of food in their day-to-day lives. Students have to deal with many ongoing stressors in their lives, including but not limited to academics, transportation, extracurriculars, volunteering, working, and social lives. Students consistently labeled academics as a top priority and admitted that food didn't even enter their top 3 priorities. Students often engage in extracurriculars, volunteering, and networking to resume build, considering the high level of competition that university students face today. Students are not guaranteed high-paying jobs once they exit university and are constantly feeling the pressure to network and better their resumes. Cost of living was listed as a big stressor in many students' lives. Students who typically did not have to pay for themselves before entering university are now in charge of paying for tuition and textbooks, as well as their living expenses and groceries, and any extracurricular fees that they might have. These costs quickly add up and often weigh heavy on students' minds, leading them to find time-consuming jobs that take away time and energy that students could otherwise put towards bettering their relationship with food. A common theme that was both talked about and inferred by us during our table talks was the transition into adulthood. Participants often described the daunting change from being entirely dependent on their parents or guardians to having to learn how to function on their own. Due to lack of capacity, students are left struggling to rapidly learn how to manage their households while balancing school and extracurricular commitments. These food skills include shopping, budgeting, food storage, meal prepping, cooking, and meal planning, while other household skills involve managing finances and taxes. For many students, school and academic success are their priority, which forces them to merely cope and get by in terms of food and other skills. As a result, many are not able to develop these necessary food skills and are left purchasing expensive foods, running out of money, or in severe cases, going days without food. During this time, students are especially vulnerable both socially and biologically. Many students are starting off in a new city, province, or country, and their social support system that they're used to is gone. They don't know anyone here. Biologically, their brains are still growing while they are in a time where they take more risks and are increasingly unsure of their next steps. Managing all of these changes and expectations at one time can be overwhelming, and many are left struggling to cope. More so, despite adulthood being a new concept to students at this time, they feel that they are expected by everyone to behave as adults during a time that they are experiencing rapid change and increasing stress. During our table talks, students often spoke about UBCO and how the university itself has an influence on student food security. One of these influences was the food services on campus. In terms of food on campus, students noted some positive advancements. Many students noticed an increase in overall quality, as well as healthier and more inclusive options to those with dietary restrictions. However, students also noticed a drastic increase in price for portion size. Students felt that they are not getting what they pay for in terms of portion sizing and quality. Cheaper meals are heavily weighted towards carbohydrates like rice and pasta. International students specifically spoke to their utter shock at the food pricing upon arrival to the campus. This is due to the common subsidization of food within foreign universities and the Canadian monetary system of not including taxes within the advertised price. UBCO being located on the outskirts of Kelowna makes the campus isolated and leads to an increase in price. The discrepancy between price and quality and quantity of food could be increase of prices with change to UBCO food services were also barriers in achieving food security. In terms of food quality, students also noticed that a lot of their favorite comfort foods, such as the breakfast poutine and French fries, the menu and expressed their distress at not having these items. And vegan options. They would appreciate if food services listed all nutrient requirements and would like more promotional endorsement of nutrient-rich meals by campus dietitians. Students would like chain campus restaurants to incorporate full menus on their on-campus locations, and many students mentioned the introduction of a buffet-style dining. Students would also like to see more variety in food options. Students would like food services to have earlier hours to purchase a healthy breakfast and coffee, and later hours to purchase food other than pizza from the well, allowing students with later classes and labs to be able to access healthy and nutritious food. Some students would like to see a 24-hour operation on campus and at the very least, a coffee vending machine. Students often spoke about the meal plan during our table talks. Some students said that the meal plan reduced the need for them to learn how to budget, while others found that budgeting was very necessary for them, as they had found themselves running out of money on their meal plan. This is due to the lack of clarity on the differing options for the meal plan that students are given upon accepting on-campus housing. For example, students did not know how much food a bronze meal plan could get you. Other students said they simply did not know how much money was on their meal plan as they found it hard to find access to the remaining balance. Students expressed discontent with the meal plan because they are too expensive, and students feel that they could spend less on food if they weren't bound to the meal plan. The meal plan has limited options for those using it due to the lack of healthy and dietary friendly options, especially late at night when students are getting out of classes. Dorm rooms do not encourage cooking, and there are few off-campus places that take meal plan money, limiting the choices available to students on the meal plan. Finally, some students expressed distress that the university does not offer full reimbursements for leftover meal plan money at the end of the year. Suggestions given by students to improve the meal plan include making the meal plan optional for individuals and residents, full reimbursement of unused meal plan dollars, increased cleanliness in communal kitchens in the residence, and cooking equipment availability for all dorms.
In terms of accessibility, our students with diverse abilities reported issues with the physical accessibility of our campus, reporting concerns for those using wheelchairs. Students with autism also reported issues with the lighting and noise due to it being overstimulating for them. Participants also spoke about how systemic shaming and prejudice of students with diverse abilities hinders those students in seeking resources. Students report that the amount of cultural food available on campus is disproportionate to the amount of international and Aboriginal students at UBCO, and that does exist is of low quality. Some students felt that there's a lack of options for those with dietary restrictions, and some feel that there's a weight bias when accessing services. Students noted the collegiates and resource centers as inclusive spaces, but also said that UBCO should be aware of their spaces and who is welcome and comfortable in them. Often, students of similar cultures reported sticking together and that they tended to eat in these inclusive spaces, creating a cultural divide. Aboriginal students reported that they experienced racial profiling when getting food, making them feel safer in groups. Suggestions that came from this table talk included increased representation of cultural foods and dietary requirements, and integration of cultural spaces into the overall physical environment of UBCO. Students commented on how the lack of restaurants and long wait times hindered them from eating between classes or with friends. Students reported issues with campus seating arrangements, especially those in Sunshine Cafe, as they forced students to sit close to people that they didn't know, or students felt like they were taking up entire tables by sitting alone. Students also reported feeling like the campus was isolated from the greater community, and the lack of accessibility of grocery stores and cooking facilities, as well as the lack of places to store food on campus, further exacerbated their food insecurity. While the dorms have communal kitchens, the lack of kitchen utensils, lack of upkeep, and possibility of food being stolen discourages students from cooking in these spaces. Microwaves are also something that students think there's a lack of around campus. Finally, students find the long walks up the hills to the residences and Academy Hill to be hindrances to their abilities to have enough, as they can only carry so much food up the hill. Student suggestions include additional cooking spaces and equipment in accessible areas throughout campus, increased food storage systems and microwaves. Students also recommended a more secluded area for the food pantry to protect the privacy of students, a grocery store on campus, an increase in food safety and handling training for food service employees on campus, and an improvement in the business hours.
As previously mentioned, long lines in cafeterias and campus seating can be barriers to community building for students. Students felt that there is a narrow window available in September for them to make friends, and that UBCO does not foster friendship making past this time. Teaching assistants and graduate students specifically said that they feel they lack a place to eat and socialize together. Students said that there is a lack of space for communal cooking, which reduces opportunity to foster community aspects of food. International students specifically spoke about the community building components of food and how different it is in Canada. Food is central to their social activities in a fun and affordable way. It's an experience and not a monetary transaction as it is in Canada. Some even spoke to the relationships formed with their food providers like street vendors and restaurateurs. In comparison to international food culture, Canadian food culture does not encompass community building. Students said that there is a lack of spaces or communication platforms in which they can share these personal struggles, opinions, and solutions with other people and foster a sense of community. Suggestions that students thought would combat these issues includes a system to invite individuals to sit at tables. One student suggested the use of a red, yellow, and green sign that states if the individual at the table wants someone to join them. More ways to promote community include a discount for group purchases and more restaurant-style dining to promote community eating and group cooking nights. Students appreciated the student clubs that were doing important work around food security on campus and shared that they would like to see more student engagement. One common sentiment shared by students was the lack of cohesive and coordinated communications from clubs and support for clubs from UBCO's student union. A lot of work and events by the clubs does not reach the student population, and so they are unaware of the food and learning opportunities and events. A common theme in the table talks was appreciation for the free food provided by the Leftovers Club and the Ice Cream Club served with smiling faces by the Ice Cream Club. Students appreciated the community building aspects of these clubs and how they work to reduce stigma associated with food insecurity on campus. Students also mentioned appreciation for the friendly student staff in the collegiums.
Students are facing a plethora of barriers when it comes to food insecurity, which is having detrimental effects on their mental and physical, social well-being, and academic success. It's important that UBC has a food system that is representative of their beliefs. We should pride ourselves on not just pumping out students with degrees, but producing well-rounded, healthy students who are going to lead and change the world. The importance of an outlet for students to discuss and voice their opinions was very relevant to the study, with many students stating their appreciation for having an outlet for their voice to be heard. There are so many things that are stressful about university. We believe that being able to feed ourselves shouldn't be one of them. Thank you.